You started this off so well in saying we're such busy people, because we are. And I think as women, the busier we get, the less we put ourselves in the equation. I realized I was just flat out burnt out. I'd been trying to be everything to everyone except for me.
Hi, Jen. How are you?
I am fantastic. How are you?
I'm awesome now that we're together. It's like the coming of the Soul Sisters, right? We're reunited. We are both extremely busy women, doing this, doing that. Like I said to you before we hit record, I look at you. I mean, first of all, I absolutely adore you, but you've got this radiant glow about you that the last time I saw you, I don't think was there. And you're always gorgeous and beautiful to me inside and out. But as soon as I started talking to you, I'm like, wait, I'm hitting record. I loved what you said. So where do you get that glow? Because it's not in a bottle. Do share.
You know what? You started this off so well in saying we're such busy people, because we are. And I think as women, the busier we get, the less we put ourselves in the equation. And I realized I was just flat out burnt out. I'd been trying to be everything to everyone except for me. And, the switch from player to coach is chunky at best, right? You go from, I'm this great athlete, I'm the one who has to be on point and doing all these things, and all of these feed into my performance, to being a coach where you're not the it factor. The it factor is that someone else performs, and there's always more tape. There's always more to do. And what I realized is I wasn't putting myself in the equation. And I was a tournament tennis player growing up. And that's a hard sport to get back into socially, right? The tennis world is hard sometimes. And I didn't quite feel like I could pick up a racket and go play. But there's this great social scene. I'm in West Hollywood, and I kept hearing pickleball, pickleball, pickleball. And I was like, what is this thing? I don't even know anybody. How am I going to do it? And my parents got me a couple of lessons and a paddle as a present, because I seldom ask for anything. I know a lot of women were like, oh, I don't need anything. No, you know what? You do. Even if you need a freaking pedicure, you need a pedicure. And it means something.
Or a paddle,
right? It means
paddle.
Yeah, but it means something when somebody says, you know what? I heard you, and I want to support you in investing in you, because we as women will put our resources to other people, other things. So I just started playing, and I play probably 1 to 2 times a day. Even scheduling this, I said after this time, because I know I'm going to be more present. I'm going to be so much more focused. I'm going to be a happier, smarter version of Jen when I get to go hit things in the morning, right? I used to go hit things in football all the time. And now it's so funny because, we have this great group in West Hollywood, and the guys will literally be like, honey, are you okay? And I'm like, I got to hit things today. And they're like, oh, she's got to hit things today. Let's give her a good match. And it's just normalized. And so that's really what it is. And I think also, when you know that you're getting up to perform in the morning, you're going to make better decisions across the board. Maybe, instead of having a couple of glasses of wine, you maybe have one or go to bed because you got to wake up and perform in the morning. You could stay up and binge a little bit more on the couch, or you could get a little bit more sleep. Because again, I'm a competitor. And if and when I have something to compete for, or a timeline that I'm on, like, I'm a better version of myself, and it's the best decision I've made. And I encourage everyone who's super busy, everyone who is doing all things for all people, to make sure that you put yourself first on your list of things to do, because then you will do everything for everyone at a higher level.
I love that. And, I'm trying to make notes, but I give up, because I'm like, oh, we got to go back to this. We got to go back to that and chat about it. But the fact that you bring the focus back onto yourself. I have this conversation with women that are running multi-billion-dollar businesses, extremely, well put together athletes. It could be the starting entrepreneur. And why is it as women, we put ourselves last? And, even for myself, I talk about this ridiculous thing. I always say, like, what was it for you? Which I'm going to get back to this question in a second. What was it for you that sort of made you realize that? For me, it was a conversation where somebody said, when you're traveling and, the steward or stewardess gets on and talks about putting on your mask first, when you're with kids, my first immediate reaction is like, yes, I hate that. Who would ever do that? And they're like, okay, point taken. So plane's going down, you're gone. Who's helping your kids? And I was like, oh, good point. So I also consciously try to, with kids, without kids, really doesn't, fur babies, doesn't matter what you have in your life, being an entrepreneur, founder, C-suite, professional athlete, we really do tend to put especially our mental health needs to the side. And pickleball, we could talk about a whole nother session, because there's people like my accountant plays pickleball, my accountant and his wife, who are like the most beautiful people, but I would never see them playing pickleball. I see somebody maybe like you playing pickleball, but then I'm like, but she's a pro athlete and she's like way up here. It doesn't matter. It's just these people getting together to forget the stress, to forget. And like you said, it's that physicality of it that people love. But I want to know, what was it for you? Because you are so different physically, mentally, spiritually, everything from the last time I saw you. What was that point for you?
I think it's hitting low points and not even realizing that it's a low point, because it's not like I wasn't functioning and it's not like I wasn't doing things.
Right.
But I wasn't excited. Right? Like, as a person who's got people who look at me and think, this is a motivational person, I want to do what she's done, I found myself going through the motions on things and still operating in the ways that I had to, but not being like enamored with what I was doing or with how I looked or how I felt. I was just kind of like flat.
And so was it your own self-realization? Like, as I said, for me, it was that aha mask moment that just something clicked, because I knew it. And like you are an icon. Women, girls, they look up to you going, I want to be her when I grow up, right? But you're saying, but I'm not feeling that. So was it your own self-realization? Was it a friend, a loved one? Was it an incident? Like, what was it for you that kind of did it for you, where you said, something's got to give?
Yeah, I mean, it was me. I think it's hard when you are a person that other people look to because they see a snapshot, right? Like, and I think once you're used to being in the public eye to an extent, you can put on a smile, you can put on a filter, you can show up for an hour and be a rock star, which I still could, because it wasn't about me then. It was, who's the person that needs to show up for these people? And I can be that person with the best of us. We as athletes never show fear, never show weakness. We're used to having to perform. But if I wasn't having to perform, meaning getting to go speak or getting to stand up in front of a camp and inspire these girls, if I wasn't in one of those peak moments in life, which I love, like you put me on stage, bam, it's game over. Like I am thrilled to speak, right? You put me in front of girls or on a football field, lights out. But
that's not every day. That's not every day.
It's not every day, right? It's not every day. And it was always having to get juice from being me for someone else, not just being me, for Jen, who wakes up every day and isn't an icon when I walk down the street or walk my dog. I'm just Jen. And you know what? The best thing in the world for me was stepping on a pickleball court with a racket and not being Jen the first to do this or Jen the icon this, just Jen with a pickleball racket. And you know what? You're either good or you're not. I didn't introduce myself as anything but Jen. And I met people who were just excited to spend time with me as a human, not me as a person who could help them do this or as an opening to this person, or can you connect me, or can you do this? Just literally like, oh honey, we're happy to see you. And then you learn who likes you and who you like, just how you show up in the world. And then, yeah, you know what? We eventually say, oh my gosh, I had a day today at work. And you're like, oh, do you need to talk? And you build relationships that go beyond that. But what I found was I was reinvigorated by the physicality, by the challenge of, oh, watch out, I'm going to get good. Because it wasn't just show up and sort of like, you know, mess around. Like, no, I pick up this paddle and I am going to be one of the top players. Like, I need that challenge and I thrive in that, right? Like, and so, and then it was, you know, it's the physicality. It's getting to, you know, figure it out physically. It's socially getting to know a new group of people and their stuff and where do you fit and who are your people, and just really getting to be human and not having the world's expectations on my shoulders, which, you know, I really felt like, and this is probably me and every woman at some point, and I bet a whole lot of men too, but just speaking to the women right now, like, I didn't feel like I was flourishing. I felt like I was showing up, right? Like, because I would never not show up, but I found myself saying no to some things that maybe I would normally say yes to. I found myself feeling overwhelmed because I wasn't grounded and centered, and I just knew I needed something. And I needed to start judging my time's worth through the lens of, I'm not on call for everybody all times, right? Like, because that's what I got to, is like, I had to say yes to everybody. I had to show up for everything as if the world was going to fundamentally collapse. And guess what? None of us are that freaking important. I'm not. If I tell you next week, it's either going to work or it's not. If I tell you, you know what, I'm not taking calls until after 10:30 PST, unless it's essential or it's overseas, and then we do it early. But you know what? From 8 to 10 in the morning, I'm gone.
That's my time. I love
There's
that.
no place in the world that's collapsing over that.
And that's such a healthy boundary. And, you know, it's so commercialized now to say healthy boundaries and everything. But it's a real different thing. We can call it whatever, you time, me time, healthy boundaries. I think that healthy boundary is so important. And like you, I didn't live it because, you know, we're hustlers and we work and we've got the grit and we've got the old school work mentality. And to your point, you do it and you can do it for a few decades until you can't anymore. And whether it's you hitting a wall, whether it's you not feeling fulfilled, obviously I'm speaking from experience as well. It's so hard to get out of that funk. So I love the fact that you're actually talking about it, because it doesn't have anything to do with anybody else, whether you have a family, whether you're an entrepreneur, you know, a rock star, doesn't matter what you do. People get to that level of being burnt out where you're right, you just don't feel the passion or the zest for life that we should. But how empowering and what a superpower it is for you to have taken that back and say, you know what, it's okay to say no, because no could be no, not right now. No, not
it's just not now.
Not at this time.
Right.
You know, and that is, you know, like I said, kudos to you, because I think more women need to do that. I mean, Christ, I used to be available 24/7 having the PI business that I did. And it was like, how did I do that? I never slept. I never whatever. And, you know, shocking, I was burnt out. Wonder why.
And I would sleep with this. right? Like in case somebody needed me or something was going on, and we get adrenal fatigue because you have to be on at all times, which by a certain standard means you can never really be fully present when you're not connected. And I would never leave this for 2 hours and not freak out that somebody couldn't get to me in real time. And the interesting thing is, and the place that I've given myself a little grace and I'm actually excited about is, one, I found connections in my business that were not intentional connections, but ways you could grow in different ways. And two, some of the people that I was already always available to have now said, oh my gosh, Jen, I miss you. Like, we need to catch up and re-engage and do stuff together, because I didn't just, I think I was too available, and that's not attractive either. Sometimes I guess you got to be the pretty girl at the junior high dance that, literally, like, and sometimes I was like, I'd be so into my friends that I didn't even notice a boy, and then they'd be like, oh, I always liked you, but you were just never into me. And I'm thinking, I had no clue. I had no clue you were even into me, right? But like,
yeah,
I think
you just see things different.
Yeah, I think it's healthy and necessary. And, again, it's friend groups, it's competition, it's, as women, valuing our bodies for what they can do for us, not what somebody's looking at and seeing. Like that, these biceps are powerful because of the forehand, right? Not just because somebody thinks they look good in a dress. And I knew that when I was in football and competing, and I'd lost some of that. And I frankly didn't like the way I looked, especially as a muscular person. You put some stuff on top and you just look big. And I saw pictures of myself and I thought, no, nope, this is where you are. And I'm not going to judge myself, but I'm also not going to just say, yeah, there's nothing I can do, because there absolutely is. And it doesn't just have to be walking on a treadmill or doing something like that, because again, I was burnt out in that, right? That was a part of my burnout, right? Like I was a hamster on a wheel, always really tight on diet and those things. And I kind of had at a point that, like, if you're not joyful about working out, you're not joyful about food, and you're not joyful about work,
what else is there?
Right? Like, and
you have to enjoy those things to a certain degree. And it's funny you said something. I actually just did an interview with Dan that just bought BioSteel, which we'll chat about after this podcast. But the thing is, one of the things he said, and he's got many businesses, is he takes that time. He goes, yes, I'm up at 5 a.m. and no, it sucks. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to whatever. But if I don't carve out that time for me, then I'm not really good to anybody else. And exactly, you're saying the exact same thing, and you're reiterating, make time for yourself. And if you pick knitting, that's one thing. But people like us, I feel you need that physical release, because from what I understand, and you'd know better, if you put your body through a stressful workout, meaning you're sweating, you're running, you're hitting the ball, or whatever you do, hitting a punching bag, I don't care what your workout is, then when you go and slay your day, then you're going to feel better. It's not going to be like, oh my God, this is so big, because you were just on the court for 2 hours. That was big, right? So just physically, it's like the fight or flight. Your body doesn't know, is it a bear or is it just a bad person, right? So do you feel like your body reacts differently to stress and everything when you're doing what you're doing?
100%. I think we all need it, and whatever that is, right? Like, it was interesting. I played this morning, and there were some new people on the court, and I just was like, okay, this is what it is, right? And I'm not going to be overly competitive. I'm going to try and keep the points going. I'm going to focus on my partner feeling good about today and wanting to come back tomorrow, right? Because I remember walking on that court and how intimidating it felt when I wasn't quite sure if I belonged yet, right? And yet you still get to hit shots, you still get to go be social, you still get to do all of those things, right? And then I would turn it on every once in a while, right? Like, oh, okay, we're, here. And my partner was like, whoa. And, and it's just, it's really reading those things. But our bodies do need and do thrive with whatever it is that kind of brings you joy. I know friends that love yoga and that's their place. To me, I'm a hyperactive person. Yoga is torturous. Like I can't. I need to, like, meditation to me is blocking out the world and going and hitting some shots, right? And feeling that immediate adjustment of a bad one versus a good one. That to me is like, ooh, okay, or smacking a perfect overhand. I get joy and it de-stresses me, right? And that's that fight or flight, right? Some people do well in calming and grounding, and I do well in, it's go time. I've always been a high adrenaline person, and I think sometimes we mismatch the ideal of this is what people say is a good workout with what is good for you, right? Like, and I'm going to go into this because training was my business long before I coached in the NFL. I first got certified to teach aerobics at 18. This has been my life. And everybody would ask me, what is the best workout? There is only one right answer. It's the one you'll do.
Ooh.
If you hate yoga, yoga is not the best workout. If you love yoga, yoga might be the best workout, or it might be a great part of a workout routine. If running hurts, don't run. Ride a bike. Do something else, right? Like, if running is your goal, don't just say you're going to run a marathon. Go in a run-walk mechanism where you can thrive in that goal. But if you hate it, it's probably not the best solution for you. Pickleball was a good ramp-up sport for me. Number one, I was a great tennis player and probably never should have quit, but got burnt out at 14. But that forehand drive that everybody is scared of on the pickleball court is work that I put in as a junior, right? Yes, wow. You adapt it, but I had those pathways already. So this was a sport that I knew I could get into and get competitive quickly, which is something I needed coming out from a pressure-filled situation, right? Like, I don't lightly play football. That's, when I step on a field, even if it's like a celebrity game, I'm like, I gotta be one of the best in the world. At pickleball, I'm like, I gotta be one of the best out on the court today. And you know what? And I'm gonna hang in with the boys and, be one of those top players who can mix in with the best ones. And they all know to fear a couple of months from now, because then, it's going to be a different story because I'm catching them all.
I can't wait. We need some video footage for this podcast.
We do.
Too. I need some Jen and pickleball court. And you've actually inspired me I've been invited so many times, and I've got my own workout. Just to your point, I love kickboxing. I've got a messed up back. I've got a neck. I've got issues like everybody does, but I continue to do it because I love it, because I show up, right? And now I'll mod something, I'll do whatever. Yeah, but it's like you said, going to do yoga it honestly is extremely painful for me, but I don't, like you, I don't knock the yogis. I have a lot of good friends that are yogis, and good on them. But for me, it's just like, oh my God, but like you said, something where you're moving continuously and you can be competitive at the moment is very attractive. And I think it's matching those. What's that?
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think it's matching those, right? Yeah. And not being able to, or not being afraid to change things up and add elements to your workout, right? Like, is it going for a hike because you want to see something beautiful and you're going to go with people? I think we're social creatures. And one thing that COVID taught me is that I really missed, being social through sports. not just competitive, but social. And, pickleball is a welcoming place in that sense, because there are lots of points of entry and lots of different fitness levels. And that feels good to me.
I love that. And I love the fact that you said that even for the young people watching, because I know having, 4 boys and all in competitive hockey, their team, as much as I'd love to say that, they love their family, and of course they do, their second family was their team. Yeah. And once they're out of that, it's like a deer caught in headlights. It's like you miss that camaraderie. So now this leads in perfect to what I was going to ask you. You said it really gave you a sense of belonging. And I feel like as women, we often don't realize, whether, I know a lot of people don't like the word networking, but connections, collaborating, all of that on top of the sports aspect as well is so incredibly important to be able to connect with these amazing women that maybe are doing something similar to you, as in they're transitioning, or they're, fighting something, or they're at their peak in their speaking career. Whatever the case may be, you meet these amazing rock star women. And I think it's so important to find a place where you feel like you do belong, outside of the home and outside of work or whatever. Do you feel that's like a big thing for you?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I've learned is that you really build synergy in places and spaces where somebody's not directly doing exactly what you're doing, right? Like, I think, unfortunately, for a lot of women in certain industries, they have experienced / been taught that, there's only a seat at the table. And so there is still a bit of inherent competition when it's really close, right? When what we're doing is like, if we were both private investigators, let's just say, like you mentioned that before, which I have no skill in, so I can't even, although I do have a PhD in psychology, I'll bring that to the table.
I was going to say, I call it BS, because part of it is psychology.
But I would have been a consultant for you, because we would have been different. You know what I mean? But like, I think even that conversation of saying, well, do you need somebody with a PhD? Because maybe I can help. Like, then we're finding synergy of our own unique talents. But if I had an agency and you had an agency, is there the same feeling of abundance that guys have been taught? And in certain places, I think we're a yes. And in certain places, I think we're not there yet. So really being, I think, strategic with finding women and creating abundance, right? Is it a new take on an old business? Is it a, this, as opposed to either they're going to hire me as a speaker or you as a speaker, and okay, well, I've already spoken for them, so now I can refer you, but there's, so sometimes I've found in the places where I would have liked the most, I think, mentorship or support, that there was inherently a bit of either insecurity or competition, which often made me feel isolated. And I don't thrive in those things. Like, all the things that I've tried to create in my business were about helping, supporting, and elevating others. And being first, that meant sometimes that I actually developed my competition. And that a little bit got hard, because I was like, well, why wouldn't you want to do this together? And so I think it's a learning process where you really have to first realize, if you're going to mentor, people are going to grow in all different ways. Some past you, some parallel to you, some with you, some in a completely different way, whatever it is. And that you have to give it without the expectation of return. Otherwise, just because you would do something doesn't mean other people are going to. And then, and then we get feelings hurt, which in all fairness, the other person could have been like, well, I had no idea. Right. Like, and so I'm trying to look and understand that with the perspective of maybe the answer is going in places that you didn't know you needed to go, right? Like you didn't know that, I mean, you and I have a similar spirit from completely different backgrounds. So the only thing that you could do from that is like create cool stuff where you're going to flourish, right? But
100%.
before we knew each other, we may not have known that, right? Like, and I think it's being willing and open.
I was going to say, I think it's being open 100%. And, when I created I Am Unbreakable, people were like, in my marketing team, well, what's your niche? And I'm like, all rock star women, actually all rock star humans, all kind humans. So what I agree with what you're saying, but I also would urge women, especially, like you said, find your space, because I don't know that, like, and I agree. I've also met people that you're in competition with, or people are in competition with you. I don't look at it that way. My whole business is all about lifting other women. And if you thrive because we featured you on the cover, or if you get a speaking gig because you were on a podcast and you killed it, I applaud you. And that is the difference. So I think, like you said, our mission, our spirit, our vision is very similar and very much the same. We both do speaking, but I would be like, I'm bringing Jen with me. And you would be saying, you're like, oh, I've got another cool speaker that might, if you need somebody else. So I think as long as you align yourself with those people, and I think you learn super quickly who those people are. So somebody calls me and says, okay, well, I need to be featured, or I want to cover, or I want whatever. And it's the same with you. If somebody calls you and says, well, I want you to do a speaking gig. Well, I'm not paying you. Well, I'm, and you're kind of like, okay, let's just hold on, I think you could sort of gauge. I think we're experienced enough to do so, but I urge, the community that's watching this podcast to really do your due diligence and maybe put on your private investigator hat. And like you said, you and I would have never spoken maybe. I mean, who knows? I mean, I do a lot, you do a lot of media, so I know our paths would have crossed, and thank God for that. But I think it has to be a win-win situation. One thing I'm really going to encourage people to do too, you don't call somebody, whether you're cold calling, whether you're emailing, and, oh, what can you do for me? My first question is, it's not even a question, it's, this is what I can do for you. Will that benefit you? No? Okay, well, what about this? Okay, so we can't come up with something. Let's keep talking about how we can collab together. Because if it's a one-way street, get the heck out of there, right? Like, you don't need it. And you've been down a lot of one-way streets. We all have. But I think we learn, the older or more experienced we get, I feel like we're able to lessen that. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think, one thing I've noticed, and, some people love it and some people don't, right? Is just being direct in those things, knowing who you are. And I always tell people, when it comes to calling somebody, get your ask right. Like, and make sure it's not in line with you, it's in line with them. For a professional athlete, for example, we always get asked for X, Y, and Z. If you said, this is all I need, and I'm going to make you look like a hero, no, I don't want your money. A lot of the athletes would be like, wait, what? Yeah, no. Like, and I tell people I'm worth a lot more than I could donate to you, period. I'm a female athlete. I played for $1 a game. Do you want my dollar? Cool. Or do you want a 15-year pro football veteran with 6 rings and X, Y, and Z who has a PhD in psychology and can give you a perspective that no one else can? Which one is more valuable to you? And they kind of go, oh, well, I hadn't thought about it that way. Which means that you didn't really take into account the whole that is me.
Yes.
And in that perspective, I'm not moved. It's like the same thing if, somebody asks me questions that they could have Googled in 3 seconds. Google that first and then say, oh my gosh, I listened to this and you said this and it really moved me. Or I read your book and here's something that just, I just was moved by. Then I'm like, oh, okay. Snap, you did your research. Snap, you know a little bit about me. Like I'm more invested because you invested time up front.
Exactly. And I love the fact that you're basically sort of boiling it down to one sentence, which is know your worth.
Yeah.
Whatever that worth is to you. Don't you think?
Yeah,
and
it is.
So,
and again, like we said, being able to say no. And I think a lot of women, we struggle with what is the term selfish, right? Like the second you look out for yourself, you're selfish. Since when is self a negative? Right? So we just said selfish is a negative. Inherently it has that. But self-ish. Let's think about the ish, right? Like, let's say it's self-ish, right? Like, that's the shit right there. That's the ish right there. Okay, so self-ish. And we're going to start looking at it that way because guess what? You want all of me. You don't want a fraction of me. You don't want the lesser version of me. You want every bit of me showing up for you. And guess what that means? You need me doing some ish for myself. Okay? That's just it.
I'm going to use that next time. I need to go do some ish, and people are going to be like, what is that? Ask Jen. Just going to do ish.
Well, no, that's how they used to beep out shit. I'm sorry to say it on the podcast, but, they'd say that's the ish right there. That's the shit right there. I'm going to do some self-ish, right? That's it.
Yeah, and you know what? To your point, you bring up so many good points that, like I said, I kind of gave up trying to write them down and go back. But, having that time for you and for yourself so you could bring all of you. Like you're saying, you will want all of me. And this is how I can show up, is don't call me between this time and that time. I'll get back to you. It was astonishing to me. I just want to go back to this phone thing, because as my phone is sitting here too, by the way, nice purple, is that I walked away. This is when I first started. I've been at this sort of journey for about 4 years now, the self-ish journey. And I'd walk away from my phone and, I'd come back maybe 20, 30 minutes later. People were like, oh my God, where were you? I couldn't get home. I'm like, oh my God, what's wrong? Well, nothing. You just didn't respond. And I'm like, is something on fire? Like, did you get in a car accident? Like, I just don't understand. But it's not like you. And I said, I know. Exactly. Point taken. It's not
right?
like
people treat us as we set the standard. Right? And, I'll still have my phone when I'm playing and I'll check it in between matches and I can see if, if my players need something or there's an emergency, I can still look and see it, but everything else can wait until I am within myself. And knowing that I had lost myself means that the people who know me are going to be like, oh my gosh, I had no idea you felt that way. Number one, that's most of us. Most people will say, oh my God, but you're so strong.
Oh,
I had no idea. And so strong is almost weaponized because we don't ask for help and nobody knows what we're going through, which means that we have not set boundaries and we've not expressed what we need in our people and our relationships. And I'm the first one who is very good at turning conversations on other people so I don't have to process my own stuff, right? Like, as comics are great at this, and I'm very good at comedy, so I know it, right? Like, people would always say with Robin Williams, they didn't know he was depressed. That's because he learned if he made people laugh they would assume that he was good because they felt good around him. But it's a mechanism for diffusing people from looking at you. And I'm really good at that, whether it's making people laugh, making them smile, making them feel confident, or turning conversations to them in order to protect what I maybe don't feel great about talking about with myself. So yes, I can make it look like I'm 100 over 100, 100% of the time, unless you see me collapsed at the end of the day and I go, what is the meaning of life? Right? Like, and they're not going to be there for that, because guess what? I've already made everybody else feel like $1 million and sent them away for me to have to deal with what's up here. And it's, people aren't going to know. And they are going to say, that's not like you, because you are somebody who fires 100 over 100, 100% of the time with your phone connected to your consciousness so that you can make everybody else feel good. And at the end of the day, not know why.
Yeah. And everybody takes like a piece of you. And,
Yep.
I had a mentor, Tony Robbins, which most people know. And I was going through a really, really shitty time. This was a few decades ago. And, and I talked to him, the few times a year that we get together, at events and whatnot. And I was going through something terrible, and I was like in tears, and he was like, almost like, you kind of deserve it. This is what I heard. And you know what he said to me? I was, and I wasn't like, oh my God, why? But it was kind of like, why? I don't understand. And he's like, you get what you put out. And then all I heard was, so I deserve this. This was my takeaway. So I distanced myself from the whole group and from him and the team. And, about 9 or 10 months later, I finally, one day, I just picked up the call. And one of the girls there, I told them my experience, and they were like, well, did you hear what he said after? I'm like, does it matter what he said after? I'm like, listen, I respect him, love him, whatever. But it was a very hard thing for me to hear, almost like I deserved it. And she's like, and she kind of started laughing. And I'm like, okay, none of this is funny. And she goes, but you didn't hear what he said after. And I'm like, okay, what? I'm like, humor me. He said, you get what you deserve, raise your standards. So I missed the I'm like, oh my God, had I heard raise your standards, which is exactly what you just said, I wouldn't have been pissed off for 9 or 10 months, but I had to come to my own realization. Again, not being open to hear it was the biggest thing for me. But the thing what you keep going back to is raising your standards, having the healthy boundaries, doing the selfish things for you, because it's okay to self-care and it's okay to be self-aware, but it's not okay to be selfish, right? So I love the fact that you say that too. Raise your standards. You deserve 2 hours a day or 15 hours a day if that's what you so choose. So ladies, raise your standards, right?
And let's give ourselves permission to be really present, right? Like, I do a lot of different things in my life, and people ask me, how do you balance doing all of those things? And I'm like, because I hyper focus on those things, right? Like, when I am doing X, I'm with X.
That's it.
If I need to be kind of there for my phone in case of something, fine. But focus here, then move here, then move here. Like, people will laugh. They're like, aren't you flying out like Friday? When's your flight? I'm like, I don't know. They're like, what do you mean you don't know? I'm like, I'll look Thursday.
I
knowing
love
that it takes no energy in my brain until I have to get to it. And then when I get to it, I'm on it. Right? Like, I had 4 major projects I had to balance in July. Guess what? If you're not here right now, I can't deal with it. And I literally told people I will talk to you after July is over, because I was so stretched that even if you got me, you don't want me, right? Like, you don't want me saying, okay, I can schedule you in for this, and then you think you're doing somebody a favor and you're not. You're doing them a disservice because they got a fraction of you, and that may be their whole impression of you going forward. Let's be really interested. We've all done it. We've all made time for something and someone and then lost the bigger picture in the process because they were like, oh, well, you're kind of a jerk, or you wanted too much, or this, and you just didn't have all the information to process. But we as women thought we were trying to do all things for all people at all times, and then we didn't leave a great impression, and we closed a door potentially because we were fighting so hard to be present for other people when our bandwidth was too stretched.
Yes. Oh, that is worth its weight in gold. And it takes failure. It takes saying no. It takes, like you said, having doors closed to actually realize what you just said is 1000% true, and some of the best advice that could be given throughout this podcast and throughout, life and business, because, it sort of goes into the next question I have, but you feel like you're doing something for somebody, but if you're only 30% there or 50% there, and you're 100% girl, I know I always say 110% girl, but people are like, but you only have 100% to give. So if you don't have 100%, we shouldn't be giving. That's sort of my motto, my new motto, because I would give this person 2%, this person 20%, this person 80%. And, you end up disappointing and not, delivering. So I love that. Kate, you and I could talk for hours and hours and hours. I have 2 more quick questions and then I'm going to say goodbye. But I want to ask you what, sort of, because I know you could probably go on forever, but as we could all, because we want to do so many great things. What do you want your legacy to be?
You know what? I'm not sure yet. And I think that's fair. Having been a first so many times, and always said my goal was to not be the last. Well, that's guaranteed at this point, which is really cool. There are women who are doing great things coaching in the NFL. Flag football is going to be an Olympic sport in 2028. We started that in 2010, the U.S. national team in 2010, right? And in my lifetime, football will be forever changed for women. And that's never going backwards. It's always going forward. And there will be generations of girls who never had to grow up in a world where she couldn't see herself in the game. And
I think that would be part of your legacy.
It is part of my legacy, but I'm too young
I think you started, though. I got to be honest with you. Knowing you the little bit that I do, I think I know you, pretty well. And I feel like the reason you can't answer that, because you've already done all of this, that's always, like you said, forever going to be there. But I think you're creating something so much bigger and so much more powerful that, like you said, I don't know yet means, man, do I have great things to come. That's how I
if that was all the legacy, then I've reached my goals at 46, and I certainly, that's not enough. And I think that's a little bit of, what I went through earlier this year and saying that it was burnt out was also realizing that, that fight has been won. We won that fight. You know what I mean? Like, we as women won that fight. And then it's like you have so much adrenaline and so much this, and it's like, man, we're going to go, 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 go. And it's like, wait. But it's a different story now. And, what's that next story? What's the next evolution? I don't know yet, right? Like, because all of those things that were once impossible, now are possible. And I look at that with excitement, but it also goes, well, shit, we won the battle. Like, what do you do now? Right? Like, it's a weird thing, right? Like, so exciting and it's such good progress and there's so much momentum, and then it goes, I'm a fighter who doesn't have a fight, right? Like, I kind of feel like Floyd Mayweather, like, ain't nobody picking up the gloves anymore. And you're like, oh, really? Like, there was a whole line of people, and now they're like, yeah, we agree. And I'm like, we do?
You're like, yeah, but you're already next. I already know some of the stuff you've got cooking, and I love it. But the fact is, you know, our tagline, the struggle is part of the story. So that was sort of, like you said, a struggle. And I know you're going to be fighting for something else. So sort of to end it, I want to ask you, I am unbreakable. What does it mean to you when you hear that? And what does it mean to you to be unbreakable?
It means you're always going to get back up. All of us feel broken at times, right? And there are things that will break us in the moment. We just can't let them keep us on the ground, right? Like, I tell people in football, it was never a question of if you were going to get hit. It was when. And the choice was how you got back up. And, you know, a lot of people think of toughness or being unbreakable as being impervious to pain and life shit and, you know, all of that. And that's not the case. The truth of it means is that we can be bent but not broken, right? And that the dents define us. They don't determine the rest of our journey. And that's what it means to me.
Scars. I love that. And, you know, you said, I love the analogy of you're gonna get hit. It's a matter of when. How do you get back up and what do you do with that after? I always look at it as resilience. I mean, people say, well, what do you think of what I am unbreakable means? And to me, it's the resilience of, you know, like you said, we're gonna get hit. Life is gonna hit you hard. And from different directions when you least expect it or when you do expect it. And what do you do with that afterwards? Do you stay down where you are?
Yep.
Or do you get back up and fight your ass off to come out stronger? Right? And you are such a pillar of strength when I think of, like you said, what you went through this year and all your football stuff and all your accolades. Like, you know, I love and appreciate you for that. But being able to talk about mental strength and mental wellness is so incredibly needed, especially for women, that I think this conversation was just amazing.
You know, I think,
thank you so much for your time.
At one point in my life, I really did believe that strength was never admitting weakness. And I think that's a really unhealthy way to be. I think true strength is being honest about the journey, especially when it's hard and especially when it resonates with somebody else to help them through the hard times. And we can't get there if we're afraid of our own humanity.
That's amazing. And you know what, Jen, talk about, I don't know, I'm thinking you missed your calling for being a psychiatrist or psychologist, because the philosophies that you can sort of take from sports, take from your schooling and from real life, and to be able to, like you said, be able to share that with others, because you don't know who's watching this podcast. If it's one person or a billion women, as you and I both want to reach, you are helping somebody. And that, to me, I mean, they say in every single thing in life, if you're giving and you are in service to others, you know, you can't sometimes feel your own pain, right? And that really is a lot of the times where the secret is. But man, I love you to pieces, even more than I did before we started this podcast. You are absolutely, thank you. You are absolutely phenomenal.
Sounds
big
good.
Big love, big hug to you. And you and I will chat very soon.